Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Auto Repair Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Walker, and my co host today is Kim. And
Hello.
today we have with us a special guest, Arun Kumar. And Arun is the owner of Driven Auto Care, but more than that. And we're going to get into that as we go. But before we get too far in, I want to thank our sponsors, RepairPal, for providing this episode. RepairPal is the key that unlocks more business for your auto repair shop. Find out more at repairpal.com/shops. Well, hi, Arun.
Hey there. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, he's being a real champ because at the time of us recording this, it's 8:35 a.m. Central Time, but Arun, it's 6:30, right?
It is. Yeah. I'm in the shop.
Warrior. Love it.
But as the name of your business goes, Driven, I would imagine you're the kind of guy that 6:30 is not early for you.
This is fairly normal.
Yeah.
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 I'm a 4 a.m. type of guy.
Yeah, that's Kim as well. I'm that late owl, and Kim is the early bird, and
It used to be 4 a.m., but I don't know. I've given that up, and it's more like 5 a.m. now. And this morning, I thought I was getting up at 5:30 because we went to bed late last night, and it was 6. I slept late last night. It's Brian's fault, probably. Anyways.
So, I guess as we get into this, let's talk about the name of the business. It's Driven Auto Care, and that's a perfect name for an auto repair shop. But with you, this is a play on words. There's so much more to it, and there's an entire brand there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So it all started when I was 19, and I decided to get a tattoo of the word driven. And I first was going to get it on my back. And as we were walking into the tattoo place, my girlfriend at the time convinced me to get it on my shoulder. So I have the word driven in Lamborghini font tattooed on my left shoulder. And at the time, all I really was thinking is this word to me means both the dictionary definition, which is to be relentlessly compelled by the need to accomplish a goal, but it also meant that I was very, very passionate about cars and driving specifically. And so I took that and emblazoned it on my body, and then didn't do much else for about 3.5 years. At that point, I had 2 more things that started at the same time. And it was basically, I graduated from college. I started earning my own money that was sufficient to actually go out and get into cars a bit more. And so I went out and bought, or leased actually, a most enthusiast car I had ever gotten, which was an Infiniti Q50. The snowball started rolling down the hill. I've now gotten myself up to something like 40 cars I've owned over the course of my life.
Oh my gosh. Calm down, Brian.
And at the same time, I've employed the word and the need to accomplish goals and unable to sit still, tons of energy, tons of desire to accomplish and achieve with my life. And I flipped it from what kind of started out as shame of being overly materialistic or feeling like I have too much energy and I need to kind of tone it down, to just, nope, this is who I am and I'm going to embrace it and use that to really add as much value as I can to the world in my lifetime.
Thanks. Super.
Man, I could, with what you just said, we have a direction that we're going in this episode that goes back to a LinkedIn post that you made, and I'll let Kim bring that up. But with what you just said, I could certainly shift the direction, because I love what you talked about just now. it's interesting, the world that we live in today with social media and all of these things. It will absolutely shame you for being successful.
Yeah.
And I love that you said you're going to go with it. This is who I am. 40 cars in, at this point. And I'm the same way. I mean, I love cars. There are, call me materialistic, but there are things in this world that I love. And I don't think that there is a problem with getting them when you work hard, to accomplish that.
Yeah. I'll try to get us back towards, I know, that LinkedIn post, but I think, there is a bit of a reputation within our industry that most independent shop owners are former technicians that decided to go out and start their own business. That's very much not me. I tried to work on my own stuff and broke way more than I fixed. And so I just decided this is not for me, and I really should be paying people to do this. I'm better at other things that can earn me the money I need to pay professionals to really get it done correctly. But the reputation is that of not a very successful or lucrative business in independent auto repair. It's not very common. You think of this business as one that just prints money as opposed to other industries.
Yeah.
But part of what we're going to get into here is the fact that I do believe that we are right on the precipice of a big change where this can become a very lucrative business due to the fact that cars are so much more complicated and there's so much more expense and liability in it, and our consumers are going to start valuing things differently that will enable a higher level of profitability in this industry.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And then, we have this technician shortage that we talk about all the time, that adds to it, because when you have that great technician in this day and time, they are worth their weight in gold. And the shop that they're working for, obviously benefits from having them. And, if something doesn't shift with the blue collar exodus that has happened, then, simple rules of supply and demand are going to, that is going to drive the price of auto repair up higher and higher and higher. And honestly, it's not high enough as it is when you compare us to the other trades out there, like HVAC, plumbing, electrical, all of that.
Absolutely. I had an interesting comment from a client recently who is an electrician, and he actually said that my labor rate is higher than his, which I thought was odd. I don't exactly know how that happened, because every other labor rate that I have seen, the people who come to install or who have come to repair and install a new lift that I bought and repair my other ones and do our certifications and all of that, they're $305 an hour. We are not $305 an hour.
Yeah. And their equipment consists of a van.
Exactly.
Filled with, some, comparatively speaking, some pretty basic tools.
Yep. And I'm getting charged for the service call and every single minute that they are there and all of the parts and fluids and everything that are required for the job, and rental of the forklift when they sold me an air compressor and needed a forklift to get it into place, and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And nobody's questioning them.
Yeah, the price is the price. I'm looking at the itemized bill, but mostly for my own education more than to nickel and dime.
Yeah. Well, let's get into this this LinkedIn post that you made, Kim. Why don't you bring us into that?
So I want to we not the part that was recorded when we started this. I was showing Brian something Jocko related, and that's right when Arun came in. So Jocko on his podcast reads a lot. Can I read your LinkedIn post? Is that okay?
Sure.
I mean, it's public. It's on LinkedIn, so I guess it's fine.
Yeah.
So I'm scrolling LinkedIn the other day, and I saw this post, and Then I got the email that Arun actually commented on the post and tagged me and, asked me a question. And it was really amazing. And after I read his post and we were messaging, and then I talked to my team, and because Arun is not only a friend in the industry, he's a client of ours as well. And so I was sharing that information with our team because we're like, this is great messaging. And I want to read his post. This was a week ago. And it says, there are 11 automotive shops in the plaza where Driven Auto Care is located. 5 of them I have a good relationship with, which I want to talk about that. Like, that's a whole nother topic, but I think that's a big piece. 3 of them I've never talked to. One of them made a first impression when the owner walked in the door to cuss me out for parking in his spot. I recently had a client call me after picking up their car, mad at me for dirtying one side of his car quite badly while it was at my shop. Turns out those neighbors had washed the owner's giant boat with a mop right next to my client's car, splashing mud onto it. One of them is known for randomly charging his clients' credit cards without their approval, saving credit card numbers and charging them at a later time. Straight theft, and failing to pay his vendors or employee. One of them accused me of stealing a customer when they wanted to do a sublet deal and keep the customer in the dark, but then mismanaging the communication so badly that the customer came into my shop and cut out that shop instead. Driven Auto Care, and here's what we're going to be talking about. Driven Auto Care is the gold standard for automotive services. We do not, and I love this, we do not disappoint, delay, or deceive. We do not pull the wool over the eyes of our clients. We do not take time to mop our boats during the workday. We aim to inspire confidence by providing the absolute best experience you've ever seen, confidence in us, and as a result, confidence in your car. We will put all these bad shops out of business. Stay driven. And then Arun commented and tagged me and was like, hey, let's talk about this messaging and marketing and that sort of thing. And so we talked about it and I shared it with my team. This was just a week ago. It's already being discussed about the right way to take that message and incorporate it into Arun's website, social media. He's already recorded a video and sent it to our team, which will ultimately be turned into a blog. But this messaging of what I'm calling, so it's interesting because I called it the 3Ds of Driven, but it's that we won't do that, right? It's we won't delay, disappoint, or deceive. And it's just that whole gold standard thing. And how long have you been like, how long has that been a thing? Because that we want that to be a very big part of your messaging. And when you're looking at a community where there are shops all around who are not doing the right thing, you're doing the right thing. You're taking care of people. You're caring for people. And doing the right thing is what's going to be your differentiator and that gold standard and help you to stand out. So like I know where it came from because you had those experiences, but what do you want to say about that? Like, this came from probably the beginning of the conversation with the whole driven thing. Something is different with you.
Sure. Well, so I will take this to the fact that I am not a former technician and that I am a very, very, very good customer of shops. I have spent tens of thousands of dollars with shops over the years with all of my different cars and all of their different problems and modifications and all of that. And I decided with the business that I started before I owned Driven Auto Care, which was called Driven Performance Advisors, which was it turned into a shop coaching business where I basically found that the only automotive aftermarket businesses that I could effectively sell to were shops because I knew where the owner was and I could walk in and pitch my services. And I wanted to basically help them run a better business so that they could avoid these pitfalls that I was experiencing as a customer. And the first example of this was I wanted coilovers on an Audi that I owned when I lived in London. And there's plenty of backstory there, but I'll skip it. And I found a shop that was recommended to me just on the outskirts of London. And I pulled up at 7:30 in the morning when they opened, and there was one guy there just unlocking the doors. And I had to get to work, so I was kind of in a hurry, and I wanted to drop off my car. And I didn't know what experience to expect dropping off my car, but I had the coilovers in the trunk. I had a certain height I wanted them set at for my car. And I walked up to this guy and I said, "Hey, I'm here to drop off this Audi. I'm supposed to get coilovers installed today." And he didn't even speak English. He was a Romanian guy that worked in the body shop in the very back of this very multi-purpose business that I was dropping off my car at. And so he said, "Okay," and took my keys, and I didn't hear anything until 3 p.m. that day. And at 3 p.m. they said, "Okay, we're working on your car, but it's quite rusty, so we may need to keep it longer just because we need to break through all of the rust that's holding your suspension together." They called me at 5:30 and said, "Okay, your bill is going to be a little higher than we first told you because we had to buy different hardware to install these coilovers, but your car's done, and come pick it up by 6." And this was 5:30, and I was in central London and was not going to be able to get to the outskirts of London by 6 o'clock. And so I said, "Well, I can't get there till 7." And they said, "Oh, well, that's okay. We'll still be here." So I got there, and the owner was sitting on the couch in the lobby on his phone. There were a ton of people still there. The place was jammed full of amazing supercars and sports cars, all heavily modified, all this. And there was my car done in great condition. They had done a really good job with the coilovers. And so I was a happy customer, technically. They had done exactly what I asked them to do. And the bill was a little higher, but that's because they had to solve a problem with my car. And so I picked up my car, but the owner looked so stressed. And so we were talking, and I was saying how he is in this dream world of getting to run a business that just interacts with all these amazing cars all day long. And he hated his life. And over the course of the next few months, I got to know him a lot better. And eventually he became my first client, helping with all of these business operation improvements. And my point in saying all this is I felt delayed. I felt disappointed in the service. And although I didn't feel deceived, I felt like I had no clue what had actually just happened. They worked on my car for 2.5 hours. And they charged me more than I thought I was going to get charged. And they really kind of jerked me around in terms of the customer experience. I've had no one there to drop off the car in the morning, no paperwork, no expectation, no discussion, no signature. And then I pick it up. My bill's higher than I thought it was going to be. They're open way later than their website says. And nobody's very happy, but the work is done. And that was such an odd experience. And it just kept happening like that in every single shop that I interacted with. And I thought there must be a better way for this to be done. It can't be that every single time I'm a customer that I'm expecting broken promises, that I'm expecting things to go wrong, that I'm expecting my bill to be different than what I thought it was going to be. That is horrible. And as a very good customer, it just meant that I kept bouncing around. Every time I felt that a shop wasn't doing the right thing, I would leave. And also being on the inside as a consultant to shops, I found there was tons of this deception, delaying, disappointing going on, but it wasn't out of malice. It was out of desperation for a bad business model that wasn't making money and that was overly stressful. And so here we are today. I think it can be done better. And I think people have been doing the actual work well for a long time. Not everybody, but there are good shops that do good work, high quality out there. But no experience that I had was consistently confidence inspiring. Nobody could give me this experience of thinking, you know what you're doing front to back. This makes sense as a client experience, and that I have high expectations, clear expectations. You're managing them where I need to be managed in terms of parts delays or things that go wrong or uncertainties in a repair. And then you are delivering and you are giving me confidence. You're standing behind a warranty. You're taking care of me when things go wrong. I will be willing to pay for that every time. There is no need to race to the bottom when you're delivering that kind of a service. So that's my soapbox.
So they say, the most successful products and services that are created are the ones that you create for yourself. And it sounds like because of the frustrations that you experienced in, as being a consumer of auto repair, you at some point decided I can do this better and decided to actually do that. What did that look like?
So like I mentioned, I was a consultant to a number of different shops. So I went through a couple of dozen shops as clients over a 2-year period where I ran Driven Performance Advisors exclusively. And I did that both in London, and then as I moved back to the US, I got some US-based clients all up and down the West Coast. And it was a good experience, but I was stretching myself extremely thin. There was a lot of travel. It was difficult to retain clients because I felt that people were not implementing all of the suggestions as quickly as I would have liked them to, as you would expect. And then at the end of the day, it was a matter of, I don't think I can actually keep this up and scale it. And I had a interesting moment of clarity where I was in a coaching group, and the coach encouraged all of the participants to declare themselves an expert in something, whatever that was for yourself, and to use that as sort of a guiding North Star for what it is you really should be doing with your profession. And so for me, what that declaration ended up being was, I'm an expert in leading growth in automotive services. It wasn't, I'm an expert in telling other people how to grow their automotive services. It was that I am supposed to be the leader of it. As you mentioned, I'm a big student of Jocko and leadership, and I've always taken that sort of step up into the person of responsibility role, even in, early childhood kind of situations. Mm-hmm. And so then I thought, okay, I need to actually put myself in the driver's seat, become the driver. That is what I call myself on my podcast today. And in doing that, I found the opportunity to buy out a minority partner in one of my existing clients. So that was a shop that I owned for about a year. We did vinyl wrap, paint protection film, and ceramic coating and detailing. And in that year, we tripled sales. We grew out a team of 5 people. We moved into a much bigger facility. And it was, for all intents and purposes, becoming a success. But my business partner and I disagreed on the future of the business. And as the founder and the namesake and the main installer, I did very much rely on him as the technical expert of the business. I don't install paint protection film or vinyl wrap or ceramic coating, but I was doing nearly everything else for the business. But I did need him to actually perform most of the work and train our team and lead the operation in the shop. And I felt that he was not stepping up in the way that our growth needed him to. And that was fair because he didn't want the same growth. Mm-hmm. And so we just had divergent visions for the company. And at that point, we decided to part ways. And after about 6 months of going back into just consulting, I found a business for sale that was about 8 miles from my house, and it was at a good price. And I recognize the name of the shop because it's right off the freeway, and I've driven past it a million times. And I thought, well, let's see if I can make that work. So I was able to make it work and got a big loan and put all the money I had into it. And here we are a year later, and still got money in the bank. So I'm doing something right. Yeah, we've taken what was a couple of different very long-term brands in this plaza, Performance Auto Care. It's been here since the early 90s, and transformed the whole thing into Driven Auto Care. So 9 bays, 6,000 square feet. I should have 3 technicians and a new general manager here within a month or so. And then I'm currently looking at acquiring the second location.
So when Kim and I were traveling around early last year, so early 2023, we traveled out to California and we were visiting some clients, and that was really my first time experiencing the situation where that you're in, where you'll have a plaza and every business inside of it is an auto repair shop, and some of them might be auto repair, some might be collision or something like that, but they're like all auto repair related. And we saw the challenges that came along with that, with the parking and all of those things. But you brought up something completely different. You have other shops that they create a reputation, and you almost have to combat their reputation because you are located in such a proximity to them. Can you tell us a little bit about how that has been and the things that you've done to overcome that?
Sure. So the biggest priority right when I took over this business was the complete rebrand and renovation that we did. So that took on a number of different forms. I would say the biggest one and the highest priority for me was removing the probably 20-year-old signs from the frontage of the building and repainting it and installing my own signs. And given we changed the name of the business, that was a necessity anyways, because it was confusing people for the 3 weeks or so that we had the old name on the wall, but the new name on the Google listing and all that. And that was priority number one. So we already have the best and brightest paint and signage in the plaza. And next was a complete renovation of the lobby. So we threw away probably 95% of what was in the lobby. We completely redid it, everything except for the floors. We repainted, new lighting, cleaned everything, the usual paint, soap, and lights marketing tactic there. And changed it from this I think was actually quite a big deal that I took as a high priority. We changed it from a seated desk that was sort of in the middle of the front room of the shop to a window that had a telescoping computer monitor arm on it and a standing desk. And so what this did is it took the dynamic from customer walks in, throws their keys down onto the desk in front of the, former technician turned shop owner who's groveling at their feet for business. And yeah, I'll do your oil change for $5 less. And come on, get it in right now. And sorry, sir. Yes, ma'am. That kind of a environment that I think has existed for a long time, to one that is much more collaborative with our clients. And so we both stand at the desk, or there are, tall sort of bar stool seats there. And we both look at the computer screen. We're both planning a maintenance and repair plan for vehicles that have probably never had a digital vehicle inspection before. They're coming in, and we do, unfortunately, tear apart a lot of cars. We had, a 90,000 mile Acura in here yesterday that needs $9,000 worth of work.
Wow.
And it's just never been properly maintained. And a lot of this stuff probably could have been avoided because it was, a steering rack that if you do a power steering fluid service regularly, you're not going to blow out seals as often, for example. That was a huge perception shift in the business. So a couple of things there: the signage, the front lobby, and then the last one that I'll mention was we cleaned the doors and then put up chains in front of the doors. So apart from just a massive purge and cleaning of the shop, reorganization, getting rid of old lifts, putting in a new lift, we put up these bright yellow chains showing people that they should not walk straight into the shop, because that's another big problem here, is that a lot of clients culturally think it's okay to just walk right into the shop, and that is not something we do here. So we are the biggest, the cleanest, the nicest, the most luxurious, the kindest people, and the highest quality in this plaza, and that's what sets us apart.
So when people,
I feel like John, our video editor, he needs to pull that as one clip out right there, because like so many people, when you ask, well, what makes you different, and they're like, well, and they just kind of ramble about things. You were like, bam, 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 bam. And yeah. I think that for you to be able to say it like that, we're like that with our core values. It's like, here it is. And our whole team gets it too. So I can't help but imagine that had a ripple effect that came from you all the way to every team member that you have. And I bet that also attracts people to your shop. The clean, the bright, the organized, we treat people right, we take care, it's just huge.
Yeah. I will say, despite all of that, and I know I really didn't mention anything about our technicians or our equipment or our training or anything like that, although that also is part of the branding and the confidence inspiring piece. I always say we're selling confidence. We're confident in ourselves. You can be confident in us. And that means you can be confident in your car. Because at the end of the day, one of the worst feelings ever is you go to get in your car in the morning and you're not sure it's going to start, or you're driving down the freeway and you have this horrible vibration and you don't know if the wheel's about to fall off. Those are the kind of really gut-wrenching feelings that you just don't want. And that's where I want to be that solutions provider, to make sure that you're confident in your car. But despite all of this, it's not without people who still have it completely stuck in their heads that we are out to rip them off. This has only happened once to this extreme level, but it's happened a number of times on smaller levels, where I had a husband drop off a Honda Odyssey for work, and he said, I think there might be something wrong with the brakes and the oil change light is on. It's like, all right, we can handle that. So he agrees up front to, I think it was a 90,000 mile service or something like that. So it needed a few different fluid services, and we were going into winter, and he wanted this hydrophobic windshield treatment that we offer. And so I think the bill that he agreed to up front was about $900. And then we did our inspection and said, okay, yes, you do also need rear brakes. So I sent a text message with our report to the number on file and said, hey, you also need rear brakes. And I think there may have been a couple of other items on there, either preventative or, early term wear, or whatever it was. And I didn't hear back for a half an hour or so. And we're doing all the rest of the services. So we're still got the car on the lift. We're doing the other fluid services that it needed. And all of a sudden, another car pulls up, and the husband and wife get out of the car. And the wife storms in, and she says, what in the world are you doing with my car? And I said, well, we are doing the services that your husband signed on the dotted line and agreed to. And she said, I can't believe you're charging nearly $100 for an oil change. This place used to have fair pricing. Now you're trying to rip us off. I can't believe this. What even is this? You want to charge us $750 for rear brakes? That's out of this world. I've never heard of that before. You're just here to rip us off. And I said, no, I mean, those are our prices. I'm sorry. That's what we do here. And she wanted none of it and said, well, can I take my car? I'm going to take my car. And I said, okay, well, you owe us for the $100 oil change. And I think we had done about half of the other services. And so she gets her car back. And I never heard from her again, but I had an interesting comparative experience last week, which was, this lady's extremely upset that we charged at the time. This was back in October or something like that, nearly $100 for an oil change. And I recently had someone I know send me a repair order from a dealership for a 50,000 mile service on a 2018 Volvo. And this Volvo needed an oil change. And it's a 3-page repair order that also says we inspected this, we did your tire pressure, we refilled your windshield washer fluid, et cetera, and it was $700 for the 50,000 mile service because it's packaged as a dealer 50,000 mile service.
Mm-hmm.
And they just said, yeah, that's what I'm buying, that's what I'm getting. Such a different perception.
Yeah. And that's not the client you're going after, right?
No,
we know, like for us also, we're an EOS company, so we follow EOS to the tiniest little detail. It's fully integrated into how we do things, and knowing who our customer is. I was just onboarding a new employee yesterday and spent some time explaining, training her on EOS and going over the traction, which is what we're doing now, our quarterly goals, and then our yearly goal, our 3-year plan, and all of this stuff. And somewhere in there, I explained to her, here's who our perfect client is. And she was like, this stuff is amazing. Like no one ever has this. And she was just blown away by it. But there's always going to be, when you're attracting the right customer for you, by default, you're going to bring in other people as well who fit the mold for what is going to be a great client. But when you were just laying that out, it reminded me of just that whole conversation of other shops in the area. And it's very rare that we ever talk about the competition piece. But when your post on LinkedIn came up, it reminded me of a quote and I'm going to read it. And I went and posted this in our private Facebook group, the Auto Repair Marketing Mastermind. I was like, hey, y'all, talk about this. But it's very powerful from a successful, inspirational entrepreneur, Henry Ford. Okay. And it says, the competitor to be feared is one who never bothers about you at all, but goes on making his own business better all the time. And I feel like that is what you're doing at Driven, by being driven, focusing on what you're doing, your goals, your customers. When, there's that I could never find this picture. And then someone had it and shared it with me, but it was Michael Phelps and what's the other guy? I want to say Nolte.
Ryan Lochte.
Ryan Lochte.
Yeah.
When they were in the Olympics and they were swimming and going at it, right? And they're, the camera's on both of them. Michael Phelps did this. If you're not watching,
no, Ryan Lochte did that.
Was it Ryan Lochte? I got it
Yes.
mixed up. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so he took his eyes off of where he was going and he looked over at his competition. And from doing that one tiny microsecond little thing, he ended up losing the race. And it just reminds me of this whole conversation we're having, where I think you need to know that the competition is there. And I think we should always be aware, but there's plenty of work out there in the world for everyone. And the only way we're going to get where we're going is keeping our eyes on what's forward. And I love this conversation. I'm sure, knowing you, that you probably are aware of that quote about, competition to be feared is the one who's not bothered with you at all. And you've got these other shops in your plaza, but you are coming in, rebranding, doing all of the right things with your team and taking care of your customers. And I believe you're gonna get where you're wanting to go, which is why you're already looking at another shop. So kudos to you. I love it. I'm proud to know you. And we get to work with the top tier shops in the industry. There's only, what's the number, Brian? I think we've all figured out it's like a small percentage of shops in the country are actually involved in this industry. And it's the ones like you that we get to work with and see at these events and everything all the time. So I really enjoyed hearing all that you've had to say today. So thanks for your time with us.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's great to work with you also.
Thank you. Anything that you would like to leave our audience with before we finish up?
I think the key is what you just said there, constant improvement. One of our core values is always raising standards. And so the question, if you listen this far and this all sounds great, then what you can do to continue to make progress is ask yourself, what is the excuse that you are making to yourself today that you need to stop?
Awesome. Now, you have a podcast that our listeners may want to go check out. Tell them a little bit about that podcast.
Sure. So it is called the We Are Driven podcast. I have, as you can tell, a bunch of different brands around the word driven. We Are Driven is a cars and motivation synthesis brand. And so it exists pretty much just in the podcast and a YouTube channel. The podcast is called the We Are Driven podcast. It's on Apple and Spotify. And then the YouTube channel is called Driven Diary.
And if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
You can go find that LinkedIn post. I'm all social media. Pretty easy to find me. There's only a couple people in the world with my name, and I'm the one that has driven all over everything. So
it's Arun Kumar, and Arun is spelled Arun. So go find him on LinkedIn if you want to get in touch.
And Kumar is the wrong spelling. It's not the normal Kumar. It's Coumar.
Okay.
And we're going to put all of this in the show notes as well. I'm actually adding the Driven Diary right now, including a link to that famous LinkedIn post that got this whole conversation started.
Great.
Well, Arun, thank you again for being with us today. And for our listeners, thank you for listening in today. Remember, we are just one of many podcasts on the Aftermarket Radio Network. You can find the others at aftermarketradionetwork.com. I want to thank our sponsors, Repair Pal, again. We could not do this without them. We hope you'll listen in again next week. And until then, go fill those bays.